Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks very much for your attendance. There'll be a few people coming in and out. Feel free to mute your mics. I just turned webcam on for now, just so people can see that I'm not Nina. It's Matt. My name's Matthew Allen, and I'm kind of helping host today's event. So thanks again for your attention, and welcome to Careers Talk number 2 for 2019. We're very pleased to have Gijs here today, and Ljupka as well. Gijs from the Netherlands, and Ljupka from Macedonia originally, but working in the US, as we heard before, on the East Coast. And both have worked for many years as consultants in waste management. Very exciting role. I've had a little experience myself there as well, so I think there's a lot to learn from these guys today, and certainly they've had some experience around the globe, but in particular in the US and Europe, and certainly looking forward to hearing both today. So thank you and welcome. Today's rough format is a bit of an introduction, which we're doing now, and then I'm going to hand over to Gijs, and he's going to go through his background, career pathway, and currently where he is. And then we'll pass over to Ljupka, who will discuss the same things, background, career pathway, and currently where she is. And you guys, feel free to talk about what you like when you're speaking. There's a bit of flexibility there. Following that, we'll have some question and answers from attendees. So any questions you have, feel free to ask them at that point, and then we'll bring it to a conclusion. So overall, should be done within kind of half an hour to an hour. Yeah, happy to be flexible and go with the flow. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Gijs, who will take us through his background. Sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly, Gijs, but just go through your background, career pathway, and your current role, and kind of how you got there for the participants. That would be great.
Hi there. Can everybody hear me? Hopefully yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk here, Matt, and inviting me. It's great to see you all around here, and I wish you all a good afternoon or a different date of the day if you're somewhere else placed than in Europe. Many thanks for the invite, and I know Matt quite well, and also Nina from during my period when I was also a volunteer for ISWA YPG Group. I've been vice chair and chair for a year, and one of the co-founders. So, and it's a great initiative which gave me a lot of network experience. I would shortly introduce my background and then tell something about being a consultant in the solid waste management industry. My background is that I've studied human geography from developing countries and also economics, international economics. After my studies, I worked for 3 years for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And what I did was organizing training activities for companies in developing countries on how to increase their exports. During those 3 years, I learned a lot about being a professional and what you should do as a professional, because the main thing that I did was hiring professionals to do their training job and giving them feedback on how they could improve on their training capacities. And what the main feeling that I had during those 2 to 3 years of working experience was after 2 years that, well, I'm only facilitating to others, but I want to start my own company as well. So then I started to discover or starting to create ideas on how I could start my own company. At those time, I got back with a friend of mine who worked with the concept here of consulting. And what we did was during those after 3 years of working, we started a new company within overall company which was mainly based on consultancy. we had at a certain time we had employees, and but the main thing for me was to experiment with entrepreneurship on the one side, and on the other side I wanted to become a consultant, and I wanted to specialize on a specific theme, because in my experience, the more you are specialized in a certain expert, or in a certain method, or in a certain way of doing things, then you can actually then it's more easy for other people to say, well, I need to take Gijs, I need to have a service like that, and I need Gijs for that in this specific case. So you need to specialize on something. So during the first days of our entrepreneurship, I had interviews with a lot of people, and for sure I wrote my own personal development plan on the things that I could improve. But what I did at first days there as well was to write my personal acquisition plan, and to see what kind of clients are really interesting for me, and what kind of industries I would like to work for, and to have interviews with people on what kind of services do they need, and what kind of expertise. And one of those interviews happened to be with a manager in solid waste management industry. I really liked solid waste industry, but I didn't know anything about the whole industry. So we had that interview, and there my first assignment actually started. So and that was about like 12 years ago, I think. And my first assignment was really practical, of realizing a collection system, an underground collection system in the city of Deventer, and to make sure that all the stakeholders were aligned. And that first assignment made me taste maybe that's not the good word, but the good things of the solid waste management industry. And I did a second assignment and a third one, and I realized that this industry is really the industry that I want to specialize in the upcoming 10 years. So that's why I quitted the cooperation with my friend at that time, because we had different interests, and since then I'm purely focused on process and project management in the solid waste management industry. What I did in the first couple of years, what I already told, was having a personal acquisition plan. So what I did every year was defining my dream assignment, and my dream client. What was my next step? What I really would like to do. I always say I'm not going to do an assignment twice, because then I'm not learning on the job. So I want to do different things. That's also part of my personality. And after my first dream assignment was, for example, to work for a knowledge institute on sustainable packaging, which was totally new at those days. And what I did was I said, well, I want to do an assignment for that specific institute, and share that with as many people as I had in my surroundings. And what happens with that specific assignment was that an old friend of mine, or an old study mate, said, well, I have somebody who links there. So and that's the way I got into an interview with the director there, and she gave me 3 months later my dream assignment. So within 4 to 5 months I got my dream assignment, which was quite an amazing result for me. And actually I followed that approach for a couple of years, because that way it makes sure that you got into new clients. And actually each of my dream assignments I got within 3 to 6 months. Except for one, and that was my dream assignment of doing something with solid waste management in a developing country, and that took me 2 years. But that's an assignment which I closed, I think, 1.5 years ago, which was focused on an assessment on solid waste management in the refugee camps of Jordan, where all the Syrian refugees are coming in, and we assess the basic situation and how can you improve through recycling, etc. So that's how I worked in the early days. During the years, I've been doing assignment for large cities. I I've been doing assignments for associations. I've been doing assignments for national government, but also internationally. And I'm now also working, for example, on I think 80% of my work right now in the Netherlands for national and international clients, and 20% of my work is international. I'm now preparing an assignment in Iraq and in Pakistan. So it's actually interesting countries. Well, I'm looking forward to those. Now I'm like 10 years further, so I can't define every year my dream assignment anymore, because I've got too many assignments for that. But I still, it's still a way of working which I really like. To be honest, like the first couple of interviews you have in those days are quite. Well, you need to step over a certain. Well, I'm not the one that is a easy seller of myself, so you need to find a way to do it. But once you have done some acquisition interviews, then it becomes easier and it becomes more natural, and it's really interesting to do. So I'm not sure I'm on time, but I think I'm talking now like 10 to 15 minutes. So the challenges I got through my career are now is that is how to
You're just cutting out a bit, Gijs. Have you moved, or could you move into another area? You're just starting to cut out from what I'm hearing. I don't know if it's just my computer. Wherever you were before was fine, but the sound, yeah, Isabel's finding it too. You're just starting to cut out.
Yeah, totally cut out.
So just try moving.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's.
Is this much better? Then I'll try to do this. If you have, if there's still some, if sound is still not good, just let me know.
It's a little better. It's still a bit sketchy, but it's a bit better.
Okay. Because otherwise I need to arrange a different line, and it will take me a couple of minutes. In that case, if the sound is not good, then we might move on to Ljupka, and I will arrange a different line then. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep trying for a little bit, and if it's not working, we'll I'll pass over to Ljupka, but just try a little longer, Gijs, because it's really interesting what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, the reason why I'm still a consultant and not changed to a different job is because it keeps on challenging me every day. I run now these days about 8 to 10 projects at the same time, and they are each very, very challenging. And I think the main advantage of a consultant is that you always get new challenges, and you don't get stuck into a line assignment which is the same job for 4 to 5 years. But that's also the main advantage is sometimes also your disadvantage is that if you want to, it's easy to be seduced by a new possibility which are not directly in line with your own interests, but which give you an income and which are time consuming. So the main challenge as a consultant is to keep forward moving and to see the path you're moving on and to keep on the path. Or if you're deciding to go left or right, is that you do it in such a sense that it actually that you have been choosing for it in a good way. I think for me, being a consultant is on the one hand, it gives you great opportunity to also, if you
don't like something in an assignment, well, you can move away from it within 3 to 6 months without being needed that you need to change into a new job. But if you like it, then you can build on it by trying to make acquisition for a new similar job. So it gives me great freedom, but it's also a challenge to say no to some very interesting assignments which might not be in the path that you want to develop towards.
Great, thanks for that. Hi, so that was a really good summary and covered some really interesting points to getting where you got to today. And certainly sounds like you're juggling a lot of different projects, and it keeps it quite interesting. There's a lot of different work, but the drawback is, as you say, you can't do everything, and if you want to work on something for years and years, it's probably not for consulting. Consulting's a bit more short term. So great, thanks for that summary. We've got a question, but we might leave that until after Ljupka's spoken. So thanks, Gijs. We'll get you back on shortly. I'll just hand it over now, or introduce Ljupka, who, as mentioned before, was born in Europe, Macedonia, and is now working in the US. She works as a senior environmental engineer at Eastern Research Group and has more than 10 years of international experience as a consultant in the space that we're all either working in or interested in or want to work in. So I'd like to introduce Ljupka to talk now about her background, career pathway, and current role. Over to you, Ljupka.
Thanks, Matt. Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be on the other side instead of not an organizer, but a participant to this career talks. It's my pleasure to be here. I was a YP until like a month and a half ago. Participated in the YP group from its beginnings. I think with Chills, we were in the same group that actually founded this group, YPGs. So it's been a pleasure, a little bit different experience from US and for all of you in the other parts of the world. Good morning to everyone, because I'm calling from the East Coast of the US. Still trying to wake up though, but but it's good. I think I can talk at any point. So as Matt mentioned, I was born and raised in Macedonia, and it's interesting how my interest in garbage started really early in my life. I was lucky as a high school student to be included in a program called Young Master's Degree in Sustainable Development from the University of Lund. And at that point, the motivation was, okay, I'll go to Sweden at the end of this year. And another one was that my father did not want to buy me an internet connection. And just to put that in perspective, this was 1999 in Macedonia, and it was dial-up connection, and most of the people were using the internet connection to talk on ICQ, on MERS, and most of you don't know what it is because you are from a different generation than I am. So my father was like, no way I'm buying you internet for you to just talk to some random people on the other side of the world. You need to give me a real reason that you need internet for, and I'll buy it, no problem. So I'm like, oh gosh, okay. What is this going to be? And then the opportunity presents itself when one of my teachers in high school was like, hey, there is this program in sustainable development, blah, 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 environmental studies, something, and you go to Sweden at the end of the year, but you need to be to do like an online course for the year. And I only heard two things. I'll need internet and I'll go to Sweden. And I was like, yep, I'm in. Sign me in. I'm going. And that was enough to convince my father to get me an internet connection. So score one. And at the end of the year, I went to Sweden, score two. Little did I know that it's going to be an experience that's going to shape my life from there on. And but while we were in Sweden that week at the end of the year, we were presented with all this goodies for the students and stuff. And among that, I can hear a terrible echo now. Someone just put themselves on unmute. Okay, I think it's better. Yeah, thank you. And we were presented with all these different goodies. Among one thing was a pen made of recycled paper. So imagine the situation. I was 17, coming from Macedonia, that just not even 10 years before that break out from Yugoslavia, still developing country to these days. And I have this pen made out of recycled plastics. No, recycled paper in my hands. And I'm standing there and be like, huh? What is this about? So I learned more about recycling, and we were introduced with other topics that are part of sustainable development. So for some reason, that recycled paper pen stuck with me. And year after that, when I was deciding what I'm going to study, I realized that environmental studies and environmental engineering and something related to environment was the most exciting things for me, most exciting for me to study. And that was 2001, and I was still in Macedonia. And as you're guessing, environmental studies as programs were not that usual as they're now. So it was quite a challenging finding a program at the university that would get me on that track. So in that way, looking for program, I ended up studying in ecology and environmental protection at the School for Biology at the University of Belgrade, Serbia. So I moved from Macedonia to Serbia to finish undergrad, and that interest in solid waste management was still there, and I think going even stronger than ever. So after the second year in undergrad, I ended up in France at the University of Henri Poincaré for a summer school in solid waste management. And then after my third year in undergrad, I went to a similar summer school to the University of Bologna in Rimini. So through my entire undergrad, I was pretty focused to learn more about recycling, about solid waste management, about how things are done, and just in the developed world, because even Serbia, even to these days, doesn't have a solid waste management system as we consider them developed in the developed countries. So after that, as I was so focused and interested in this topic, I was lucky to get a job in a Czech company called Deconta, who had a branch office in Belgrade, Serbia, to implement developing aid from European Union into countries that have a status candidate like Serbia and Macedonia in the solid waste management. So never in my wildest dreams I ever dreamt to have this kind of a job in Serbia, just because this is not an industry that was developed at that point, that was of anyone's interest in that point. But I guess when you want something so much and you're interested in something so strongly, you find a way to your dream job. And all I can say is that I was 24 and I had my dream job. I was working as a consultant for solid waste management in an international company in a country like Serbia, when even now a lot of people are challenged with a low pace and low salaries. I had a great pay. I was living my life. And then I was like, well, I'm just 24. There must be more than this that I can do with my life than, have my perfect job on my perfect, on my first employment. So I thought, well, maybe I should go for an international grad program somewhere. And I spoke to one of my the professors at undergrad, and this was even before I got into the first job. So technically, I got into my first job because I did not get accepted to go to grad school the first year I wanted, because it was in the U.S. I wanted to go to U.S. for grad school, and in U.S. things take a little longer than a couple of months to get into a program, because I had to take GRE, and not once but 3 times, because from someone coming from Macedonia and Serbia, my English at that point was not at the point they wanted it to be. But when I came over, I realized that my English was not any worse than anybody else, because the test was just not easy. So a year into my job, I got accepted at Columbia University to study environmental engineering at the Earth Engineering Center that is the engineering part of the Earth Institute, and study solid waste management and do research in food waste management and processing of organic waste from MSW. So my entire education and my entire professional life has been focused on solid waste management. And I joke sometimes that I am the most educated garbage woman you've ever meet in your life, but I've enjoyed every step of the way and every day of my schooling or my professional life. So as a consultant, I started in Serbia, working in the Kanta, working in developing a regional solid waste management plan for northwest Bačka region. And then when I moved over to the U.S., I first worked as a consultant in the Earth Engineering Center. I was for a little bit a teaching assistant in the school, and I worked on a very interesting assignment for my master's degree, what was food waste management and food waste processing, and finding alternative ways to incorporate food waste processing to existing infrastructure in the cities. So what we did was find a way to combine anaerobic digestion of food waste with wastewater treatment plants. And I don't know how much any one of you have researched this topic, but currently this is something that is happening and being tried out at the wastewater treatment plants of New York City, because my advisor is, my former advisor on my master's thesis is a very well-known and successful researcher in this topic, and they're working with the wastewater facilities in New York to how to combine food waste processing with wastewater treatment facilities and kind of integrate and consolidate those two to make for more efficient processing of both the food waste and the wastewater in urban areas. So after my grad school, I joined Gerstmann, Brickner and Braden. It's a boutique solid waste management consulting company here in Washington, D.C. area. I was there for 6 years, and I worked from Alaska to Jordan and to Africa, all over the place in so many different cultures, regions, people. I work with couple of Indian tribes in the U.S., and it's just so interesting to be involved in so many different topics from solid waste in the solid waste management industry and on so many different points of the world. And as I'm reaching my 15 minutes, I'll just cut it short. And from GBB, I moved to ERG after 6.5 years. ERG is a little bit of a bigger company where we offer more services than just solid waste management. And in my current role as a senior environmental engineer, I do more of a supervisory and project management role on the technical side and the project management, and more business development and marketing on the corporate level. I also lead our solid waste management business sector and coordinate all the work that is being done on solid waste management in the company. So that's in short my background, where I come from and where I've gotten to, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from you guys.
Thanks very much for that, Ljupka. Very interesting from both of you, actually, your experience and where you've been and your pathway. It's always interesting to hear that and to think from Macedonia over to Serbia, then over to the US. They're all quite different. And yes, there's been a couple of questions. So now we move on to Q&A. And I have a couple of questions, but I can see there's some on the side. So I might jump to Kartik asked one from Gijs earlier. So would like to know more on your assignment with your company. Also would like to hear more on strategy used for approaching clients. So as far as I can see there, I know that you do a range of assignments or projects, Gijs, so it's probably talking about maybe the underground collection system one, and also approaching clients. I'd be keen for you to just elaborate on how you approach clients in terms of getting new work or new clients, or gaining more work for yourself, as well as your general approach to talking to clients and client management. Gijs, I'll unmute you.
Yeah, well, I realized I didn't explain all my assignments right now. But what I'm currently doing is that 40% of my work, I work for the Ministry of Infrastructure and Environment. And I've got 3 projects running for them. One is mainly focused on recyclates from plastics and how you improve supply and demand from it. We run 15 pilots for that, and I'm project manager for that. And I've got 2 projects which are focused for them, which are focusing on highly dense areas and large cities. So one of them is a project which runs for 5 years now, and which is mainly focused on how can you improve behavior of people and their separation rates through the science of behavioral insights. And the other one is creating a platform for the 20th largest cities in the Netherlands to address their problems jointly instead of everybody for themselves. What you see is waste management in the Netherlands is a responsibility of the municipality themselves. So you need platforms where they can exchange and also cooperate on activities. So that's 40% of my work. The other 40% at this stage is for the Knowledge Institute on Sustainable Packaging. I've set it up now a community of practice for large companies who produce and use multi-layer packaging like ships and plastics and for cheese, etc. They have a big issue because their packaging is seen as not recyclable and not environmentally friendly. So I've set it up a community of practice with the largest companies of Europe who are involved in this specific type of packaging. like PepsiCo, Friesland Campina, Intersnack, Unilever, Mars, to actually make a joint problem and create a roadmap towards with solutions. And I also set up a program together with universities, and I'm now busy on writing a state of sustainable packaging, which will be a leading strategy document for the industry CEOs on how they should write their vision towards sustainable packaging in Europe and actually in the world. So those are the other 40%, and the last 20% are international assignments. So what I told before is an assignment in Pakistan, which is mainly focused on zero waste plastics. And I'm now, we're trying to get an assignment right now, which is in the final stage now of closure in Iraq, which is focused on value chain analysis. There's how much is each one paying for certain types of recyclates, etc. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of your question was, how do you do your acquisition? How do you deal with clients? Well, I explained before how I did my acquisition in the early days. Right now, it's actually much easier because you have set a name and people know where you're good at. And so for assignments, I think 80% of my new assignments come from my current network. So they know what I'm good at. I'm mainly good at process management, involving of stakeholders, creating solutions to problems which haven't been created before. So getting new assignments from that network is the easy part actually for me. But the more difficult one is how do you get assignments which you can actually also which are also an improvement for yourself and where you want to set up new ideas, and you can do it in certain types. For example, if you work with a larger company, then you can go for a tender. There are a lot of tender procedures, and if you're into that, then you can just write into a tender. But for me, that doesn't work because it's too much time that you need to invest in something. It's always in competition, so you always have the chance that you can be out-competited by another consulting company. So the way that I would like to work is actually how you set up a new company. I've set it up for 5 years, a new company which was based on a product, and it all starts with the problem of somebody. So what I now try to do is always try to sense where clients or potential clients see problems. I do that with asking questions, for example, at a seminar or during a meeting or whatever, and I try to identify the biggest problems and what are the things that they're worrying about now, and which they need a solution for, which they haven't found yet. And once I've identified the problem of a potential client, then I try to develop a small route towards where you can find possibly the solution. So either by cooperating with other key stakeholders, or I try to see how you can work towards a solution. And then I'll make a conversation with a potential client and try to dig out his problem and propose him my route of how to get to a solution. And that's the way how I like to deal with it, because then you're one-on-one with a potential client. It's not in competition, and you're actually developing new stuff. So that's how I now do my acquisition actually these days.
And it's good to get to a stage, Gijs, where you can acquire new work in that way, and you can kind of pick and choose types of work that you'd like to work on that pushes you where you want to go versus taking whatever you can get. So it's great that you've got to that situation, and obviously you've done some hard work to get there.
Yeah, but it's like but actually it's the same method I used in the early days. Like try to pick your dream client and get to them to a table and try to solve their problem and or to provide a solution to their problems. And my dream assignments are not the clients of that I have today. My dream assignments are for clients which I don't have a relationship today with. And sometimes there is a very interesting assignment from a current client, but I always try to keep in mind that if you want to do interesting stuff, then you need to move beyond the things that you do today. So that's why I always try to get meetings with interesting institutes or municipalities or other parties that I would like to work for far before my current job finishes. So
great.
Yeah, if I can chip in on that one, because I do a lot of business development. So yeah, I agree with. I always mispronounce your name. I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. Just call me Chris in English, much easier.
Okay, Chris, thanks. And I do agree with him that the best is to have the sole sourced deals and stuff. But in the real world, it's really not easy to get those assignments. And I can tell from my jobs that I got hardly 20% of sole source assignments. And client acquisition and finding people that need your help is not easy, and convincing them you can do the work is not easy. And because I also have coworker who's interested in business development and is working with me, and she's many times like, but where is this going? Why are we doing all of this? We're calling this many people and sending this many things and going to this many conferences, but we've got so much business. So for business development, you need to think of like in business development, like planting seeds. Business development is about planting seeds, and you never know which one is gonna grow into a plant and when, because meeting people and talking to people is what gets you to finding good clients and good opportunities. So for me, going to conferences, presenting at conferences, meeting different people, talking to different people, reading articles and reaching to people that have done interesting jobs is the way to go. More you reach and more you talk to people, you open more doors and more potential opportunities. So never be afraid to communicate and talk to people about what you're interested in, what kind of work you want to do, and what you can do. Because this is an industry that is not that popular. It's not something that is, out there on the social networks, and you can hear a lot about. Lately, you hear more and more related to the plastic pollution in the ocean and in circular economy and things like that. But still, all the little things and the interesting projects are not out there on social media. So just talk to as many people, introduce yourself to as many important people as possible, and never be afraid to reach out to people that are CEOs and directors and chiefs of departments in the public works or universities, because those are the people that have the most information and the most sources for you to get some business.
Yeah, good point, Ljupka. And it can take some time. Don't expect it to happen overnight. So you might talk to someone and then months later or even years later, they think, oh yeah, that's right, that was that person that did that. I might touch base with him or her, and then suddenly you've got some work. Thanks for that, Ljupka and Gijs. We've got some more questions on here. if you can, look, I think Kartik was asking about your views on evolution in the last 10 years in the way we manage waste and how you see the future and the skill set we've got to focus on to help career start, to start a career in the industry. If you could summarise that reasonably quickly, that'd be great. Okay.
Sure. Well, I've actually been in the industry for now 15 years, almost 15 years. And the evolution, I think the biggest thing for me is that is finally solid waste management is the problem of everyone. And I think the biggest change I've seen is from the waste is going away and we care only until our garbage can and not after that, to the point where the hell is our waste going, so that we see all these plastic straws in the oceans and in the sea turtles and stuff like that. So now regular people are more concerned about what's going on after it's taken away. And I think that's the biggest switch, and that's the biggest change that's going to change the world of solid waste management. On specifics, when it comes to the industry, I think smart technologies are changing the industry more drastically than anything else before. And the fact that low-income countries, there's a lot of focus on helping developing and low-income countries more than any time before, is also going to change the global scope of the solid waste management industry. As for what kind of skills you need to be successful in this industry, I think one most important thing is it takes flexible people and people that are open to learn. And why I'm saying this is because the technologies we use change all the time. The products that are being put on the market change all the time. As Chris said, he's working on a flexible packaging assignment. I worked on a flexible packaging assignment almost 10 years ago for the Flexible Packaging Association in the U.S. And only now is this topic being more explored and more researched, and it's getting a lot of attention. So being as a solid waste management consultant takes technical understanding, takes business understanding, economics and finance understanding, and legal understanding. So it's definitely a combination of skills, because Chris also mentioned that we face so many different projects, and you get included in projects from waste characterization and waste assessment to waste to energy development of waste to energy facility, or looking at pyrolysis and gasification technologies. And that needs a huge amount of different skills to cover that spectrum. So I think the most important is to be flexible to learn new things, and to be flexible to learn all the time. You're not gonna learn it all in one project or in undergrad or in grad school and be ready to go and take over the industry, but you need to be flexible to learn on the go. I think that's the most important skill you need in this industry.
Great, thanks for that, Ljupka. Some really good points. I don't know if you've got anything quick to add to that before we get to the next question. Just quickly.
Yeah, I would like to make one comment based also on what Ljupka said, because I think there is a lot of change, and it really depends on the area where you are, what the exact changes are. And on a global scale, the issue of solid waste management and plastic ocean and the plastic ocean, etc. It all changes, and So at one time it's more important, at the other one at a time and less important, but there always will be waste from our consumption. So I think the issue will be there for now and also in 50 years. But the main thing is also what Ljupka said is that it's also about what if you position there as a consultant on that specific on trends like this, the main thing they will remember you for is the quality you delivered on a specific project. So it's not only about the knowledge about a specific subject, but it's also about keep learning, but also about delivering quality on the specific subject project that you deliver. And you will be re-asked for a different project because you deliver quality, and the issue is totally different. The client might be different, but if you deliver quality, that's your biggest sale point for your future, I think. And that's also has to do with keep learning on doing on the job. And the trends will be different in 10 years from now, or the issues, but you will be still there. And if you have delivered quality now, then why not in 10 years from now?
Thanks, Gijs. We have another question from Isabel Moore, this time on reaching companies and government to get them on board or get them interested in something. So the question's about, so Isabel is doing some research on plastic gasification to produce new products at Chalmers University in Sweden. And she's finding it difficult to reach companies and government to talk and apply the research. Do you have any tips on, so if you guys need to talk to a particular stakeholder for a project, get some information from them or get them on board, do you have some just general tips for communicating with them and getting that started? Hand it over to you first, Gijs, and then to Ljupka or whoever wants to speak first.
Yeah, I think, Isabel, it's a good question, and it's always the questions that I have myself as well. If you have a certain product or a certain research, how are you going to get the right stakeholders on board? And I think it starts with, if you have, in this case, a research on plastic gasification, to produce new products, it might be interesting to you to think what kind of problem does every stakeholder has with this specific product. And if you would translate it into an email, for example, what is my specific line, my first line, which I address their problem, and in the end I will provide the solution with my research. But if you can identify the problem that you will be solving for your client or for a different stakeholder, or their interest in a certain topic, then then you have the content to reach out to a certain party, and then it's quite easy to get them on board. For example, if you want to have government on your plastic gasification, if you want to get them involved, what kind of government is it, and what is the solution that you provide with your plastic gasification, and to which problem of the government? And if the problem is that all the waste now ends up in a waste to energy plant and they prefer gasification, for example, if that's the problem that you solve to them, then you can state, well, do you want to have better solutions for your waste to energy problem? I'm researching one, and I would like to discuss this with you, and then you're on the table. So I would always try to do your homework first. What's in it for the one that you want to talk with? And then you can just ask for the meeting, because you show that you have identified their problem, and if you can't identify the problem, then you can also play open card and say, well, I'm doing this research on gasification. Can we discuss what's in it for you, or what, how this might touch on your interest in this specific case?
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree with what Chris said. Try to sell them something for them. What's in it for them? And I know gasification is a pretty tricky one, because I think I've been in your shoes. I'll be happy to share my reports with you because I have done a couple on gasification, and I understand why a lot of the industry players don't want to talk about it. I'll be happy to help you, but yeah, try to figure out why this research is important for the technology providers or important for the government representatives, and what are they gonna get out of it?
Great, thanks for that, guys. Another quick one. We're probably running out of time, so Isabel's just saying thanks there. We might just finish off with this one for us. For developing countries, what are they dealing and looking into with financial sustainability for the technology intervention to address problems? Interesting question, quite reasonably specific. I don't know if you've got something to answer there, Gijs, or an opinion on that.
I'm not sure whether I understand the question very good. Kritik, maybe you can explain. Financial countries, do you mean the national governments of them or the companies, or dealing into financial sustainability for technology intervention to address problems? Maybe you can explain a little.
Yes.
My question was basically on the financial sustainability of the projects, actually. So there have been a good word these days about using technologies to address the recycling issue and the problems with the waste. But at financial level, many times they are failing. And what are the ideas that you are looking upon it that we can make that project more viable and more interesting from business perspective, or for some private organization to invest into it and carry it over for a longer time, rather than just being dependent on government? Because in developing countries, many times the fundings are like very changing and dynamic perspective in a way. Yeah.
Okay, now I understand. I think it's a good question, and the issue with waste management is that it's always the cost to society. So waste management is a service which delivers, for example, a better health environment, a better environment. And a lot of those costs for waste management, they are not included in our consumption. So we pay them, for example, via the government or whatever. So talking about financial sustainability is always talking, especially in projects, what are the advantages of a specific project to a certain which he would like to invest in. And those advantages are generally not making money. Sometimes it's about saving money from them, reducing costs. But an investment, and the thing is with developing countries is that they are developing, so they have less budget for luxury issues like waste management. So the budgets there are always more difficult to find. Sometimes they are with donors, but in general, sometimes you can't find the finance without looking at different advantages than only environment. For example, it can be jobs, or it can be other spillovers. But it's difficult to comment on specific projects now. But in general, I agree with you that financial stability of projects in developing countries, they can either be provided by an international donor or by government. But government have less means than, for example, in a developed country, because people are paying less for that, and which is normal and which is understandable. But yeah, like for me, waste is always a cost. So yeah, I think to get into the technology intervention, you need investments, but there should be a business case for either the technology provider, or there should be somewhere savings around the line in waste collection or services.
Thanks, Gijs, and thanks for the questions, everyone. We've probably got to wrap up there. I'm sure if anyone has any further questions, Gijs and Ljupka, you'd be happy to answer them via email or something like that, or yeah, if you're comfortable with me sharing some contact details, we can talk about that after. But thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance from across the globe. It has been an insightful session learning about consulting in the waste industry, and it sounds like a really rewarding type of work where you can get involved in a lot of different things, and you're always learning, which is fantastic. You don't just learn at uni and stop; you kind of continue on through your career. Thanks again for your time, everyone, and this will be recorded, so we'll provide access to that. And as I mentioned before, if you would like to ask any further questions, go through myself. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, for me as well. It was a pleasure.
Right. Thanks all. We'll end the session there.
Bye.
Bye-bye.